Dear students, welcome to our 11th session of Agroecology Science and Practice. I am Dr. Tadeo Kahigwa Tuvasima, a lecturer at Mountains of the Moon University in the Faculty of Agriculture. In our last session, we have been discussing the issues to do with soil and water conservation, and it is very important before we agree on the implementation of a particular strategy that we should know how much erosion is happening on the farm or in a landscape. There are several models for calculating soil erosion, especially by water. But there are other signs that will show us that soil is being eroded. For example, when you see exposed tree roots, when you see signs of rills or eventually a gully. Others might be as small as the splash of the raindrops. All those are indications that soil erosion is taking place. And mostly in the tropics with our rainfalls, once the land is sloping, then automatically, if it's not well covered, if there are not appropriate measures, soil erosion is taking place. But we have to determine how much soil loss is being caused. We have models that help us to estimate the USLE, and now we have the RUSLE, which is the revised universal soil loss equation, resulting from the universal soil loss equation. In the revised universal soil loss equation, there are other variables that are added to make this model more appropriate in estimating the soil loss. But we have also the EPIC, which is the erosion productivity impact calculator. We have the EuroSEM, the European soil erosion model. We have the Real Grow and others. I encourage you as students to read more about these models and be able to cite their strengths and weaknesses so that we can provide suggestions on how to improve the predictability of these models in measuring soil loss and soil erosion. The variables of each model can be found easily once you read further about these models. Fast forward, all what we are looking at in terms of agroecological practices, agroecological science, is for sustaining plant and crop systems and the animal life on the farms. We'll start with the plants, and we note that low crop productivity results from farmers failing to select appropriate varieties, climate changing conditions, planting of poor seed varieties, failure to make proper crop rotations, cropping systems such as monocropping and intensification could improve productivity but may not be sustainable on smallholder farming systems. They reduce diversity and require a lot of income to sustain them. But we know also other several constraints that are limiting crop productivity, such as pests and diseases. But we are saying that with a fertile land, a productive land, we are able to manage some of the other situations like the impact of climate change, the pests and diseases. Their negative impact can be minimized if we have a fertile soil. Sustainable plant and cropping systems can be achieved through improving plant genetic diversity. We looked at diversity within and among enterprises and how it contributes to resilience. Crops to be grown should match with the soil and climatic conditions of the area if production is to be sustainable. It is because of this mismatch that in most cases you find reliance on external inputs, trying to create a situation that can favor the crops which have been grown out of scope. The crops should be arranged both in time and space in such a way to improve soil health, reduce weeds, pests and diseases, and improve crop productivity. We have talked about diversity, and we were talking in terms of varieties, breeds, but this is related with genetics. So genetic diversity is important in resilience and in sustainable production, because productivity can reduce over time due to soil fertility, high incidences of pests and diseases, and the strategies to increase productivity would be, for example, monocropping and relying on genetically modified organisms. But monocropping is having its own challenges, and this undermines the resilience of the farm in several ways, that if that one enterprise is affected by any circumstance, then the farm is at risk and may not recover. We also know several challenges with GMOs, especially to the smallholder farmers who do not own this technology. They cannot provide the external inputs that are required to sustain such a vigorous growing crops from the seed of GMO. So with these limitations, we have to find ways of how to bring genetic diversity without necessarily relying on GMOs. The cropping systems that we have mentioned above, monocropping and GMOs, also create environmental stress to also other elements on the farm. Farmers are normally interested in breeding for resistance to seed-borne diseases, pests and weeds, improved nutrient use of efficiency from soil sources, and the simplest way to achieve this while increasing genetic diversity is through the development and use of different species or mixtures of up to 4 or 5 varieties in the farming system. Here, the cross-pollination and the breeding that is taking place if it's livestock, when you have different varieties or different lines, then the genes will mix and come up with a super organism. that is much more productive and more tolerant. The limitations of this approach is that the level of diversity in the crops might still be too narrow to deal with the increasing range of environmental challenges. However, it is better to have this small step in enhancing genetic diversity. For example, when you have maize with different colors, it may not be appropriate for processing, but in the real sense, although the taste and preferences build in here, but such diversity is good for the sustainability of the farm and for the production of healthy food. When well adapted, local germplasm is deployed in diversified cropping systems and managed with organic matter, rich soils, and water conservation harvesting techniques. So a combination of good local variety with good fertile soils and good sufficient water, much better than what we could get from a GMO that has intensive fertilizer, herbicide, pesticide. So with this strategy, we are able to do much better than relying on GMOs. Environmental stresses, including those resulting from climate variability, can be minimized by this combination. Very good, robust germplasm, local, combined with good soil management and other practices. And at the same time also, productivity is increased. This has been observed by Miguel Altieri and others. We look here at our farm, which has diversity. You can see within the same contour, different crops being grown there, and the soil being covered such that the crops can have robust growth. And of course, these are crops not affected by the same pests or diseases. Therefore, food security on the farm can be optimized. The other practice that in agroecology is very important, as we have been saying in the past, is that the crops or enterprise has to match with the conditions. So increased production per unit area can be achieved if the climate and soil in a given area match with the requirements of crops to be planted. And for Uganda, we have several agroecological zones. The selection of agricultural enterprises per agroecological zone was based on climate and soil conditions. But much more should be put in consideration when we are selecting these enterprises. It is not only the climate and the soil conditions that matter. They might matter for the growth of the crop, but how about the social elements that might result into neglect of such a crop when it is introduced in the right agroecological zone? Okonya and Syndicus and Crochel describe 6 agroecological zones of Uganda, including the Eastern Savannah, that is in Soroti, Lake Albert Crescent, the Masindi areas, Lake Victoria Crescent, Wakiso, mainland, Northern Farming System, Gulu, Southwestern Highlands, Kavale, and Western Rangelands, continuing to Kasese. So these zones have suitable crops, and we could read further in order to identify which enterprises are suitable for, have been recommended for these agroecological zones. For the students, we are encouraged to describe different agroecological zones of Uganda and look at the practices as well as the soil and climatic conditions for each zone, so that we can understand further these different zones. Thank you for participating in our 11th session, and I look forward to your participation in the 12th session.